Friends, as we gather in this sacred space at this sacred time, I'm going to invite us to take those wonderful rectangular devices, those marvels of technology that we have in our pockets, in our purses, and I'm going to ask us to go ahead and silent them. This is mostly an instruction for people my age and older who are either like having their sound on or who are still very proud of the dial tone, the ringtone that they purchased 20 years ago. Most people under that age are looking at me agog, wondering what kind of a monster leaves their cell phone on. But nevertheless, we want to take away as many distractions as possible so we can be fully present in this sacred space at this sacred time. From Psalm 121, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Esa einai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri, me'im Adonai, Osei shamayim va'aretz. Death has taken our beloved Joyce. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Joyce's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, for her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. For generations, the 23rd Psalm has brought our people comfort in times of sorrow. If you know the words, I invite you to join with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. God gives, God takes away. Blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Friends, I ask us to take a moment of silent prayer and reflection, and in this moment of prayer, in this moment of silence, if there is a memory, maybe more than one, but if there is a memory that speaks to you of who Joyce was in your life, a moment of shared wisdom, of shared humor, of shared joy, of shared music, a moment that inspires you in this moment, I ask you to dwell on that memory as we pray silently. May the words of our mouths, the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. In our tradition, there are certain mitzvot. All mitzvot are, of course, equal, but there are certain mitzvot, certain sacred obligations, whose reward we are taught is without measure. And one of them is bringing comfort to the bereaved. And one of the ways we do that, we do it by being present here in this space online. We do it with notes and cards. We do it with simple touches, simple looks. But we also do it with our words. We do it with words of hesped, words of eulogy. And when we tell stories about the person who has died, it is as if for a moment we could imagine that they're standing in front of us again, that they're back with us again, if only briefly. We have a number of people who are speaking this morning. We're going to call forward, and I apologize in advance if I get people's names, if I mispronounce people's names. We're going to call forward Rabbi Grumbacher, cousin Arnold Levy, and her children, Scott, Ed, and Kathy, and her granddaughter, Allie, and to speak their words of memory and Torah.
Her name was Joyce. In Hebrew, Gittel. Pardon me. They called her Joy. And here's proof that a Jewish saying of ours is absolutely true. Kishma kenhi. As is her name, thus so is she. Truly a joy. And as far as Gittel was concerned, it's translated as good little one. And she was a good one. Very often when I hear about the death of someone who welcomed me when I came to Beth Emeth 50 years ago, I immediately get an image in my mind. And when I heard about Joy's passing, as I told Kathy, Scott, and Ed, what immediately popped into my head was her laugh. I cannot think of anyone that I know who has so rich a laugh as did she. And it came from deep, deep down. It came from that kernel of joy that just had to pass from joy to the next person and to the next. It was like the laugh of someone who enjoyed every single moment of life, who experienced life, her life, as a joy. There's no question that hers was not always a happy life. But Joy did what she had to do to make it work, not only for herself, but more importantly, what she had to do to make it work for her sons. She left a very abusive marriage in the late 1950s a time when even the most threatened woman wouldn't think of cutting loose, as it were. But Joyce knew that there was no other choice. The years ahead were not easy, but her decision probably saved her, Scott, and Ed from misery and long-term psychological damage. And then she met Alfie, and until his death after 13 years of marriage, Joyce experienced, as her family told me, the happiest days of her life. I knew Alfie. He was a sweet and kind man, just what the doctor ordered for a sweet and kind woman. Speaking of what the doctor ordered, stretching the point a little, Joy was a registered nurse. Just a little more than 2 years after graduating high school, she graduated from the nursing program. So she was what, 21? That's something. But something even more was her graduation with a BA when she was 56. She worked in a hospital, and she worked for Dr. Gibbs, the neurosurgeon. But wherever she worked, and indeed whatever she did in or out of her profession, Joyce was a very hard worker. Joy didn't have to work hard to attract people. Here was a beloved mother who was full of life. Again, a true joy. She was a social butterfly who liked nothing better than get-togethers. Well, that's not true either. I cannot say nothing better than. What she did like better, what she loved, was to be with her family. As the family said, she thrived when around her kids and her grandkids. The room would light up when Joy was present, and Joy would light up when her brood was present. Who made up her brood? Well, our sincerest condolences go out to her sons Scott and Ed and her daughter Kathy, who was actually more than a daughter, more her daughter than her daughter-in-law, a sister to Scott and Ed, more than a sister-in-law. The loss of her son Mark was difficult for Joy, but she had Kathy and their children Marcus and Jason. She had Ruth and Seth and Joshua, Elias and Theodore, and of course Sandy, Alexis, and Eric. And I certainly don't want to leave out the spouses of her grandchildren, her 8 grandchildren themselves, nor her nieces and her nephews. All of those in the brood. Gets a little confusing, but I'm sure Joy knew to whom to send a birthday card and when. Her ties to our congregation go back to its very beginning. The Eisenhandlers were, I believe, founders. Joy's sisters and their husbands involved with the choir and programs of our congregation. And Joy herself was in our sisterhood, our caring community, and an integral part of our choir. Joy was a proud Wilmingtonian, and like so many in our community, knew just about everyone. She would go up to someone and tell them, "You don't know me, I'm sure, but I know you." And she did. If Joy wasn't the people person she was, indeed that might not have happened. But there was a mutual admiration between Joy and just about everyone with whom she came into contact across her long life. And her ties to Beth Emeth weren't just in affiliation. Joy's commitment to the hallmark of Reform Judaism, the hallmark of social justice, was manifest in her relationship with Savannah Johnson, her cleaning lady. There were no separate dishes, no separate anything. Savannah was a welcome member of the household, respected and treated the way all people should be treated, that is, not recognized for any differences. How glad I was to hear that, but I wasn't surprised one bit. I also wasn't surprised when I was told that a good adjective for Joy was bedazzled. It's a great word for a woman who always looked great. She was beautiful inside and out, beautifully dressed, and I am told would get dolled up just to go to the supermarket. There was a side of Joy I did not know about, but hey, No one is perfect. It was brought to my attention that in her house was a very large collection of elephants. I know a lot of people who collect figurines of their favorite animals. But Joyce collected elephants because they're the symbol of the grand old party. Her father was a Republican, and she was a Republican. Straight down the ticket. One tug on the lever was all that was necessary. Just a few years ago, her life changed. The stroke she suffered impaired her speech and her movements. And I only hope that her family and her friends pay far more attention. That is, that they will always remember Joy before she was stricken. That was Joy Aloisi. That was the image that must always be in your consciousness when her name comes up, because that was the woman we mourn today, upbeat, energetic, involved in life, and as I said when I began, Kishuma Kenhi, as is her name, thus so is she, full of joy, a gittel, a good one. Zichrona livracha, may the memory of Joy be as much a blessing as were the days and years she touched your lives and the lives of so many others. Amen.
Do I need to remind people? We'll welcome Cousin Arnold up at this point. Yeah. Who, me? Yes, you. And then we'll hear from Joy's kids.
I think Rabbi already told the whole story. Aunt Joy was a joy to us. She was fun. As my parents, Alma and Leon, we all belonged to this synagogue. Leon used to be the cantor here part-time, and my mother, Alma, would sing in the choir. They sort of looked at Joy, because she was the baby of the family, as the little sister, and oftentimes when Alma and Leon did things, they did it with Joy. But the great part was for Michael, my brother, and for me, Joy was always there for us. And we did a lot of things with her. It was great fun having such a wild and crazy aunt who was just a delight. And when my parents, at one point, finally could afford to do so, and they took a 6-week trip to Europe, my brother and I got to stay with Aunt Joy, and we had a ball. But the best part of that was, that's when she taught us rock and roll, and my father never forgave her for that. But as time went on, we still had contacts and family affairs and whatever it might be. She was, as already been said, the life of every party. And she was just a fun, loving person. And even after her horrible stroke and her not so great existence over the last 5 years, Scott was able to make arrangements at the Coots home that we could do Zoom calls. And she still maintained her sense of humor. And Scott and Ed and Alexis and my daughter Adrian and Michael and Phyllis and anybody else who got on the call, Kathy, we would always be teasing each other, and Joy just loved it. And of course, if Ed was not on the call, we picked on him. And if Scott wasn't on the call, we picked on Scott. But Joy loved every part of it, and she knew who was there. It was a delight. We were able to see her at least twice in the last 6 weeks, and I think she's clearly in a better place. We will miss her.
Hi, I'm Scott Berkowitz. I'll endeavor to be brief, so this will be a few minutes of joy or the greatest things in life I learned from my mother. In reading her obituary, one will find, condensed in 600 words, the many wonderful attributes of Joyce, June, Eisenhandler, Aloisi. Here, I add what could not be said there. I strive each day to be the best man I can be, to be kind and to respect others, to make the world a better place than it was when I came in it. The foundation of that comes from my mother. I'll always have great respect for Mom for what she'd been through in her life and how she handled the adversity. As my brothers and I grew up in the 1950s and 1960s in what is euphemistically termed a broken home, her experience severely affected and molded me. No shalom bayit at this house. I learned about the inequity that women face in society at that time. There was a part of my mother's life that many people do not know about or may not want to hear, a part that Mom preferred not to remember, the part of being an abused wife. In those days, this was not a topic spoken of. There was no social support system nor any resources for female victims of domestic spousal abuse. When the local authorities were called, there were no sympathetic policemen rushing to take her side. When she was beaten and strangled by her first husband, there were no advertisements on the radio or TV providing her with domestic abuse hotline numbers that she could call. When she summoned the strength to leave him, to save her life and keep her children safe, the bank accounts, the property, and even the credit history were in her husband's name, as was the custom of the time, and there was no shelter to run to for safety. When she resolved to legally divorce her husband, she found out who were her friends and who were not, and some of those were relatives. She had been out of the workforce for over a decade and needed to go back to work and support and raise 3 children on her own, but she lived in a state with a legal system which at the time did not enforce the payment of child support by the father or even permit alimony. And there were no child care facilities where she could drop off the children when she was working out of school hours. And yet, knowing Joy, she found a way to navigate herself and her children out of that toxic and abusive relationship to provide a stable and safe family life for her 3 sons and to keep a positive and optimistic outlook on life. I learned the power of a woman and of a mother. I learned that humor is the best medicine. I found that I could make my mother laugh and saw how it made her feel better and softened the pain when I so often found her sad and crying on her bed during those early years. And Mom made me laugh when she defiantly held on to being 39 years old at every birthday until she was 50, and with a straight face would introduce me to any new acquaintance as her kid brother, not as her son. I learned about social justice from my mother, that every person should be respected and treated equally, and that skin color was only that, just a color. In her household, we separated kosher for Passover dishes, glassware, and silverware from the everyday, but there were never separate glasses or dishes for food for people of color who visited or worked with us, like Savannah Hall Johnson, or our friends. At a time in our history when prejudice was palpable against Jews and Catholics and blacks, we stood together. Being generally reserved myself, I learned from Mom how to connect with people and how to put them and myself at ease, and to make conversation, although I could never light up or work a crowded room like she could. I learned that your mother is your best friend forever, the original BFF. Every child should know that your mother is and always will be your best friend for life, and you should never forget that. No one will support you and fight harder for you than her, and no one will be prouder of your accomplishments, even more proud of them than you yourself may be. With my mother, I could be honest, unguarded, say what was on my mind and in my heart without fear of any judgment, and I did so for 60 years. But 5 years ago, Mother's stroke took away much of her personality and memory, preventing her from finding and articulating her words. An irregular heartbeat stopped our heartfelt conversations. I learned from Mom that what you cherish but take for granted does not last forever and can be gone in an instant. Of course, I learned from my mother many other important things about being a man, a husband, a father, including how not to manage credit card debt. And there were some lessons not learned, such as not to be so brutally honest with people. But suffice it to say that I was watching and learning from her every step of the way. Mom is gone now, and I can no longer ease her pain by making her laugh. I know that she would agree that she's now much better off than she has been the last 5 years, and hopefully, wherever her spirit and soul are, she has the peace and comfort that she so deeply deserves. But wherever that is, I'm still certain that she's working the room.
Hi, I'm Ed Berkowitz. I'm Mom's youngest. I'm the Gazinnik, I think was the phrase that Bubba would say. I'm the mouthpiece also of two others. So we'll start with Lois Ann. My Aunt Joy was my first babysitter. She was 14 when I was born. As I grew older, I wanted to be like Aunt Joy, full of life, full of fun. She just seemed to be attuned to one another. That was us. There was Elvis. She sent me the front page of the paper the day he died, 8/16 of 1977. There was Shirley Temple. The doll she gave me, the picture of Shirley Temple holding the Shirley Temple doll she gave me. But mostly, we just clicked. I miss her more than I can say. She was there to help me at a crossroad of my life. She was just always there, with love, with understanding, with wisdom, with open arms. Her stroke took away a lot, but Aunt Joy was still there, her big, bright smile and love. From Lois Ann. Sandy was unable to come, so she asked me to pass this along. When I met Mom, she was warm and welcoming. I liked her instantly. Over the years, we became very close, especially after Ed abandoned, as you, Scott, thank you, moved to California, and then continued to travel after returning to Delaware. Mom and I would talk on the phone, but usually it was in person. I would stop by my lunch break after work, and we'd watch TV. We would talk, we would share our life stories and confidences. Mom was kind, caring, generous, and supportive. When my dad had a bout of anxiety and depression that landed him in the hospital, Mom was there consoling me while fighting the hospital staff for the best care that was possible for my dad. There were other instances when Mom supported or comforted me, but let it suffice to say Mom was always there for those she loved. I regret that I am unable to attend the funeral services and express my admiration, respect, and love for Mom. She was a gem. I feel very fortunate to have had her in my life and had the honor of calling her Mom. Mom was persevering, no doubt about it. She was outgoing. And to help with Rabbi Grumbacher, the part about you don't know me, but I know you, you had to whip off those glasses, because that's what she did. That was a part of her thing. She worked hard. Most of you knew, again, she had a pretty rough first marriage, and her true love was Alfie, as we call Dad, because that's the man who raised us, and we were reared by him, and we got all our ethics and work as well as from Mom. She wasn't afraid to work. She partnered with Dad in many aspects of their lives together. She was spirited when angered. Thus, she wasn't afraid to communicate, and that's a good quality. One of her favorite sayings when she was getting exasperated was, "I have things to do and places to go. Do you think I'll make it? I don't." But that was her, trying to get us moving down the road. She would be many at my school activities, concerts, shows, braving some cold nights to see me in the marching band at Sally's. When your high school friends mention, quote, your mom is hot, although a little creepy, it's still a compliment. Whipping off those glasses is what I mentioned before, but Mom opened up her home to me when I needed it without question. We would talk almost every weekend for 20 to 30 minutes while I was outside walking one of the little dogs that we have until her stroke. And that was a huge loss, as it was for all of us. She is in a better place and truly believes she is with Dad. Mom, I love you. I love you. I miss you. And thank you for everything you have taught me.
I'm Alexis Blackford. As you'll learn, I am Bubba's only granddaughter. Everyone has a grandmother, but only we had the force of nature known as Bubba. Age and perspective are a gift denied to many. Our Bubba was given the gift of a long life, and she ensured that we were given the gift of her perspective. I joke in part because, as you've heard, our Bubba was strong in her opinions and unafraid to share them. What I'm really referring to, though, is the natural progression and reflection that comes with growing up. As children, our parents and our grandparents are our heroes. They are the strongest, most beautiful, wonderful people we could ever imagine. Our very existence is wrapped up in them. And as we grow into adulthood, and we have the privilege of becoming parents ourselves, our perspectives naturally and inevitably change. We now see and appreciate the sacrifices made, the patience afforded, and the unconditional love that only a parent and a grandparent can give. Bubba was not the typical grandmother. She didn't want to be. She was never a typical lady by anyone's definition. The youngest of 3 girls, she raised 3 amazing men, all different and amazing in their own unique ways, largely influenced in one way or another by her. As Bubba's only granddaughter, a fact that she and I relished together, we had a special bond. One that we like to make clear to everyone, especially my brother and all of my male cousins. A little bit more me than her there. She influenced us all. I picked the shoes I'm wearing because she would have loved them, and I'm wearing jewelry that she gave me, bedazzled and all. For me, I carry with me our shared love of fashion. My need to match and appreciation of sparkly things is something attributable, undoubtedly, to her influence and spoiling. I will always think of her, fondly remembering afternoons we spent cruising around together in the big red caddy, listening to Elvis, having girl time. Easily some of my favorite childhood memories. As I grew up, Bubba was still only a phone call away, offering love, laughs, and advice. School chat that became career advice, and boy talk that became relationship advice, never pulling her punches, but always with the best of intentions for her favorite granddaughter. I left every one of our chats feeling stronger, fortified by her confidence in and love for me. I feel her absence, and it hurts. But I know that she is at peace. And with everything she has given to so many during her life, she undeniably deserves that. And a nice, strong gin martini.
Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine. I married Joy's firstborn, Mark. I'm going to read a poem today that Mom wanted put aside and read for a time such as today. It's called And Then It Was Winter. It's by Mike Daly. And then it was winter. Time has a way of moving so quickly that you're caught unaware. The future seems far in the future, then all at once it's right there. It seems like only yesterday I was among the young, just married with a young child. Our lives had just begun. Yet now it seems eons ago. The years just came and went. I glimpsed of how it used to be, how my hopes and dreams were spent. But here it is, it's winter, the winter of my life. Somehow it got here. It got here way too fast. My memories are rife. I remember seeing old folks thinking that was years away. I didn't have to think of it. That is until today. So here it is, my winter, and I can see the change. I'm older, I'm slower, and the young now seem so strange. I find taking a shower is a target for the day. A nap is not a treat I take. It's my mandatory way I advanced into this season. Unprepared for aches and pains, the loss of strength and memory. A walker and some canes. Regrets. Sure, there are things I've done and things I didn't do, but I've lived a happy lifetime. Regrets, there are so few. If you're not yet in your winter, please do take some advice. It'll be here quicker than you think. Time does not suffice. Whatever you'd like to accomplish in your lifetime, do it now. Don't put it off till later, for later's past somehow, and you haven't got a promise that you'll live to see all seasons. Life sometimes is fleeting, comes and goes without reasons. Live for today. Say all the things you want loved ones now to hear. Tell them to live their life in full, for their winter may be near. My spring was fun and full of life. My summer days were thinner. My fall was fat and happy. And then it was my winter.
Thank you and Yasher Koach to each of you who spoke. May your strength abide and continue. And Joyce would have absolutely approved of those shoes, 100%. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. Physically, spiritually, we rise for El Malei Rachamim, and we call forward Cantor Lauren Goodlev to lead us in that prayer.
El Male Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamsem Ruchan Nechona Tachat Kanfei Im Geroshim Utoim Kezarakia Maziri Et nishmat Gitol bat Yitzchak v'Leah shel halcha le'olama. Bal harachamim yastireha v'seita kenafav le'olamim. Vitzror hachayim en nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Joyce June Eisenhandler Aloisi, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Yasher Koach. Friends, for those of us here in the sanctuary, if you did not have an opportunity to sign the register book upon entering the sanctuary, you are invited to do so at the conclusion of this service, which will be in a few moments. If you are traveling to the cemetery in cortege, please be sure to use your high beam headlights and four-way emergency flashers. I have been informed that while we normally have a police escort for such occasions, today Wilmington Police is unable to escort us to the cemetery. Knowing that, please follow the car in front of you in the procession. The procession will go slowly and as safely as possible to the cemetery, but please keep your situational awareness up and running, as there won't be that police presence with us. We invite forward the following individuals who have been designated as pallbearers. And again, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. Marcus J. Landis, Seth Berkowitz, Josh Berkowitz, Eli Berkowitz, Ted Berkowitz, and Allie Blackford. Please come forward. Let's all rise. Voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All the leaves are grass, and all is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades when the wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades. The word of our God shall endure forever.
All this concludes the service here at the synagogue. Again, those going to the cemetery, I ask you to please make your way to your vehicles, and please Immediately following the entombment service at the cemetery, all are invited to a meal of condolence at Mazella's Italian Restaurant, 729 Philadelphia Pike in Wilmington. This concludes our service. Thank you.
I'm good. I was just standing here thinking I lost the